Welcome to the All Things Real Estate podcast, your go-to resource for navigating the ever-changing world of real estate. We break down the latest trends, industry changes, and strategies you need to make informed decisions in today's housing market. Check out the show notes at the allthingsrealestatepodcast.com. This show is brought to you by ROOST Real Estate Company. If you're looking for real, actionable advice without the jargon, subscribe today. Now, here's your host, Chris McAllister.
Welcome to the All Things Real Estate Podcast. I'm Chris McAllister, and it's my job to create and coach real estate opportunities and strategies that support and add value to homeowners and residential property investors. I'm joined today by my co-host and marketing partner, Laci LeBlanc, and ROOST Real Estate Company real estate professional, Priscilla McNamee. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So today's episode is for the home sellers in the audience. It's about what to expect when you meet with a ROOST real estate listing professional for the first time. You could also listen to this as an opportunity to learn what to expect, honestly, from any listing agent that you choose to interview for your home selling needs. And we're going to walk you through the exact process we use with our clients, following the same steps that are laid out in our brochure that's called Sell with ROOST. You can find that right on the main page of our website, but we're also going to include a copy of it in our show notes. So I want you to think of this first meeting as an interview, right? Where you're interviewing the potential listing agent for your home. You know, after all, your goal is to hire a listing agent that you are going to want to work closely with, for anywhere from a few weeks to, God forbid, a few months. And, you want to get this relationship right. And let me tell you something, they do too. We do too. And but you want to make sure that you're hiring an agent who's going to keep your unique interests at heart. Does that sound like a plan for the day, for the morning?
Absolutely.
All right. So before we get rolling here, I just want to kind of briefly recap what we talked about in episode 5, when we talked about how the NAR settlement empowers sellers. So in that episode, we broke down the recent NAR lawsuit, Sitzer-Burnett versus NAR, the National Association of Realtors, and its impact on home sellers. And we focused on how that settlement adds flexibility and transparency to real estate commissions. And we talked about the different ways buyer agents can be paid under the new rules, and highlighted why incentivizing agents is still a smart move for home sellers in order to attract more buyers. So we also talked a little bit about what we're going to dig deeper in today, but how we in particular proactively market listings by leveraging existing buyer databases, social media, open houses, new ways, old ways, and lots more to find a buyer for our listing clients' home quickly. So in this brochure and in that first meeting, so kind of visualize yourself at the kitchen table with Priscilla. And, she's going to have this brochure with her. She's really great at printing those out, having copies available for all of her clients. So in that Sell with ROOST brochure, we cover everything that hopefully is going to go on in this meeting. So just a quick table of contents, basically. So it starts off with, we may already have a buyer for your home. We talk about the listing contract itself, a document we call the Home Enhancement Checklist. We talk about marketing plans, how you want to be communicated with, negotiating, structuring the sale, managing the transaction, which, spoiler alert, is probably 80% of what you're going to be relying on your agent for. The market analysis, how we go about pricing your property, and what happens after the sale. And I just want to touch on, our client appreciation program and how Priscilla in particular is kind of a different kind of real estate broker. So Priscilla, I'm babbling already. So when we say we may already have a buyer for your home, how does that relate to you? How do you relate that to your clients?
I think mostly when I am meeting with sellers, typically when I approach them with that, we're working with a vast amount of buyers. So I will usually, especially like in the areas that I work, I will tell them that I very well could be working with somebody already that might be interested in their property where we won't even have to put it on the market. And that is very appealing to them because it bypasses the whole process of packing up the kids, getting the house ready for last minute showings, putting the sign in the yard, letting the neighbors know, all of that. And it's very appealing to a lot of people with their busy lives in today's world. So that I think is a huge benefit for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think that and that's market making, right? I mean, you are able to provide that service to your buyers because to your sellers because one, you work with a ton of buyers, you talk to a ton of people, and after, 30 years in this market, in these neighborhoods, everybody knows you and you know everybody else and you're just gifted at putting those buyers and sellers together. I guess when I think of we may already have a buyer for your home, I know that if I'm going to sign a listing contract to sell my house, I feel like, and I think most sellers feel this way, is I'm going to sign a contract with you. I'm going to pay you a huge amount of money. And quite frankly, if I'm going to pay you all that money, I really do expect you to sell it, right? I don't expect
Absolutely.
you to just
Absolutely.
stick a sign in the yard, get it in the MLS as fast as you can and sit back and wait for another agent in town to sell it. And that's how things worked with the vast majority of agents for years and years with clear cooperation and how we did business prior to the settlement. But I think in this market, and if not in this market this spring, I think in the years ahead, as the full ramifications and quite frankly benefits of Sitzer Burnett start to play out for sellers, I think that expectation is going to be universal. You hire a listing agent not to be the one that puts the sign up. You hire the listing agent to be the one that puts the sign up and brings you the buyer. And that's got to be our goal, I think, as a company for every listing.
I agree. I think showing a lot of empathy towards them for the amount of money they do pay for a service, for selling their home, is extremely important because it's so much money. And a lot of agents, they overlook that. They discount it. They have this attitude, well, I'm worth it. I'm worth it.
Yeah.
And a lot of sellers, I find that a little offensive.
Or worse yet, their attitude is what's in it for me, as an
Yes. Yeah.
agent, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
look at me, I'm $1 billion producer.
And they have a very bad habit of using this phrase, which I have never, ever in my career used this phrase ever. And I hate even saying it on this, but they use this phrase double dip when they sell their own properties.
Yeah, like it's a
And
bad
yeah, oh, it's just
thing.
I how about you're doing your job?
Yeah.
That's your job. That is
Yeah.
your job. Um,
Do you think
and
that's
then,
a perception that people have though, when if you say, "Oh, may already have a buyer for your home," you think the perception after all this time is that, oh, and with recent rules changing and how buyers agents are paid changing, it's not maybe this is also changing, but is the perception, oh, they're just trying to double dip? Does that turn some people off when you say we may already have a buyer for your home? Because I see nothing but upsides to it, right? Like you said, I don't have to pack up all of my personal photos and I don't have to stage my house necessarily or take my kids out last minute when somebody wants to stop by and see it. I see upsides. But I also know real estate agents like you all who I trust, and obviously, Nana has given me a really good vision of real estate professionals. Do you think there are other people who maybe haven't had the opportunity to get to know and trust an agent that see that as a negative and not a positive?
yeah, I think also that phrase is pre-settlement. I don't think you're really going to hear that too much anymore because I think they're going to be forced to negotiate commission more. Um, and I think I think it's going to be helpful. I think you're going to see the market evolve and it's going to be good for real estate and it's going to be good for our clients. I mean,
You know,
honestly.
I wonder, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but now that I'm thinking about it, how many sellers, first of all, we wouldn't use the phrase double dip in a listing uh, presentation, I don't think, but there may be some
Never,
that do.
never.
But you know what? That whole phrase double dip. So here's my big conspiracy theory, Priscilla, of the morning. Double dip is a phrase that I think was perpetuated, within the realtor network, probably by NAR, to make us as great listing agents feel guilty about having the buyer. Because, if we get really, really good at having a buyer and we don't need to employ as many buyer agents in the transaction, well, suddenly, which is probably going to be a consequence and already has been of Sitzer Burnett, we're going to have fewer buyer agents in the system. There's going to be fewer buyer agents working in the real estate business, right? So what happens if you have fewer buyer agents? Well, NAR loses a ton of money, right? Because they're not
Oh,
getting
yeah.
dues from two people. If NAR gets dues from two people in a transaction and they go down to only getting dues from one person or maybe 1.5 people in a transaction on average, that's bad for NAR. It's also bad for the big box legacy brokerages as well, who, I've always referred to as body shops, where it's in their interest to have as many licensees as possible in hopes that, somebody gets lucky, any given month. So now you've got me on the conspiracy theory tangent. But you know what? I think that's been my problem about double dipping, because it's an issue with many realtors. And I think, if I'm really honest with myself, I'm not sure it's an interest with very many sellers, which is probably why I really want to lean into that. We may already have a buyer for your home.
I think it illustrates a really important point, and probably one that sellers who are listening or buyers who are listening would relate more to. And that's just the point of this is to have the conversation, right? It's like an interview, but you have the conversation, you make sure you're on the same page. So if a seller did have a problem with, double dipping or perceived double dipping, then you would talk through that at this first appointment, right? And if you said, I may already have a buyer for your home, they could say, oh, well, I want to put it out on the market and I want to see what kind of offers we get. And and you could say that's perfectly fine. Or, so I think that illustrates a really good point that everybody's coming into this conversation with different experiences and different expectations. And they may not all be accurate or true, or, but this is an opportunity to talk through it all.
And I think it's important also to say, while we're more than willing, while we fully expect, and we're going to do everything we can to find a buyer for your home, or I'm going to do everything I can to find a buyer for your home, we are more than willing to collaborate with any other agencies or buyers agents that may have qualified buyers, and I just think it's important that sellers know that our commitment goes beyond merely putting the sign in the yard and waiting for somebody to raise their hands. We are certainly never, ever, and no good agent, I've never known a great agent to do this, or never going to turn to push away or somehow not present an offer from another agent in order to try to have both sides. Professionals don't do that. We certainly don't do that. The best in the business don't do that. That's the worst. That's the worst definition of double dip. And that's why it's also critical that a professional like Priscilla has great relationships with all the other realtors in town, because they know that they can trust her to present their offers fairly, get back with them in a timely fashion, and so forth. But that doesn't stop Priscilla from, doing everything she can to find that buyer for her seller on her own. We've got to work both ends against the middle, and that's what sets the fantastic listing agents apart from the part-timers.
And there are instances, Laci, like you mentioned, where if it is a property that I do think is going to be a really hot property, and I've had this happen on both sides, having a buyer and having a listing, where we will have a buyer if I'm on a listing appointment. And the seller says, well, go ahead and show it. And the buyer does write an offer. And then the seller still wants to put it on the market. And then we will be basically opening it up to the market, and we will be in multiple offers. So that's how it's handled. And I've had it happen to me on the other side as well. So that way, or there's no other offers, but at least the seller tried. At least the seller got the opportunity. Like you said, let me see if I can get any other offers, just to be on the safe side. And it gives them that opportunity, so they know that they didn't go with their only shot.
Yeah, absolutely. So We're already rolling along here. This is going to be a long listing appointment. So
I know we can move
I'll,
along. I don't want to
I'll try
bore
to stay
people.
on task here. So
Yeah.
the next thing that we want to talk about that's in the South Risk Brochure is a listing contract. And the listing contract, it's a crucial agreement. It's a legal document between you and your listing brokerage. It outlines the terms and conditions under which they will sell your property. Some of the key points you can expect to see and what you want to look for are this. First of all, 99% of the time you're going to be signing an exclusive right to sell agreement. So this contract gives your brokerage or Roost Real Estate Company the exclusive right to market and sell your property. That means you will not be working with any other agencies during the time this exclusive right to sell contract is in place. It ensures that the agents at the brokerage, and in Roost Real Estate Company's case, all of the agents of the brokerage are fully committed to selling your home and maximizing your return. The other key component is a contract duration. A contract is only a binding contract if it has dates. So the agreement is going to specify the duration of the listing period during which the brokerage will have the exclusive rights to sell your property. The listing price, obviously, that's a big deal, and the commission. The commission, that's what most people are most concerned about and what they want to jump to first when they're presented with a listing contract. So the listing contract details the commission structure, including the percentage of the sale price or a flat fee that will be paid to your listing agent, in this case, Roost Real Estate Company. And it also includes detail of what you are willing to pay, if you choose to, a buyer brokerage or a buyer agent upon the successful at closing. So basically, once you get the property under contract with the buyer brokerage. So in the commission contract, we actually put in there, if you want to offer a co-op, and you can choose to offer a co-op or you can choose not to offer a co-op. That doesn't mean that you can't entertain offers that don't ask for a co-op. But if you want to go ahead up front and attract as many buyers as possible and put that in the listing contract, then what happens is Priscilla, while she can't put it in the MLS anymore that you're going to pay a buyer brokerage fee if asked, she can tell anybody who asks her or any other agent she speaks to that, hey, have you seen this great property? And oh, by the way, the seller has already agreed to pay a buyer broker commission. So come on over. Did I say that right, Priscilla?
Yep, absolutely.
It also outlines agency relationships. It specifies the nature of the agency relationship, ensuring transparency and clarity about the duties and responsibilities of your agent. And I'm not going to dig deep into this because we could be here for another hour.
Exactly. That could be an entire podcast.
But there's a distinct difference between commission and agency. Agent has no bearing on commission, and commission has no bearing on an agency relationship in the eyes of the law. So those are two separate things. And in most contracts, you're going to see a separate document from the listing contract for that outline agency relationships.
Thank you so much for saying that. I wish all these new agents could understand that.
And we wish some of the old agents understood that. But that's,
Yeah.
again, another podcast, right?
Yep, exactly.
So, Priscilla, why don't you kind of take us through the home enhancement checklist and I guess how you, when you go visit a property for the first time, I'm assuming that you have the seller show you around. What do you use for a tool? What are you looking for? What's that conversation look like?
Okay, I'm just going to say that I'm so excited because that is my Bible. I wish if you had a camera following me around, I use it on every property. I have 2 properties right now that I'm listing, and we're following it to a T, and I have notes written on every single page. It's perfect. It's already pre-written with great tips in the left-hand column. For people who, a lot of people, of course, they already have their house pretty much ready. However, it has tips for people who don't quite know exactly where to begin on getting their house ready for sale. So, it's little things that you forget about, like cleaning your ceiling fans, wiping down the front door, just small tips. And then as I walk through anything extra that I see, I write it down in the right-hand column. If there's something that, I was like, if I see a house that I think maybe we should stage, or maybe add some piece, like some, or like I have some staging pieces at my house, for example. Like that's what I'm going to be doing this afternoon on a new listing outside of South Vienna. I'm going to go take about 3 totes of items, go out there and just kind of help stage the property a little bit myself, just to kind of help with the photos. This is I'm the second realtor in on this property. The first agent took photos with cell phones, with her cell phone, and just did a major disservice, had the property listed for about 10 months. And I think they had like 3 showings. Didn't help the seller with any kind of like a home enhancement checklist, nothing like that. Did absolutely none of this. So the seller is over there yesterday and today, following that list, doing some cleaning, following right through everything that we gave them. I'm going to do all the staging, and I'm super excited because I'm really hoping once we get the photographer out there, get it listed this week, I'm excited because I'm thinking that they'll get a big difference of, activity.
Yeah.
The
And more money.
presentation makes all of the difference. It really does. And that checklist is gold.
Yeah. And we're going to put the home enhancement checklist in the show notes. So if anybody listening wants to download it, they'll be able to get it from there. But
And
the
people
Go
love
ahead.
that. They'll keep that. People will keep that checklist for cleaning their house. Like they love that checklist.
Well, and the whole idea is it's designed to help the seller look at their property, look at their home the way a buyer is going to see it for the first time. Because I love what you said about the ceiling fans. That's kind of a pet peeve of mine too. But every few years I look up and it's like, holy shit, I got to clean the ceiling fans, right?
Well, especially you're tall. Like I'm so short, so I don't see it. But I mean, so it's one of those things, but I think, and a lot of people just miss it. Or vents, cold air returns.
Yeah,
We forget to clean those things.
yeah. And it's broken down, tidy up, clean up, patch up, and finishing touches. And my favorite, of course, is and this is where you have to be very, I mean, I don't know if empathetic is the right word, but you sometimes have to have adult conversations with people about what they need to do to the home. And a lot of times people sort of live in I don't mean to be disparaging, but with a lot of clutter, right? Sometimes the best
Yes.
home enhancement somebody can do is just to get some furniture and some odds and ends out of the house, put it in a storage unit, put it in the basement, put it in the garage, someplace so that people can actually see the house for what it could be, not
Chris, we
necessarily
call that maximalism. And
maximalism.
some of
Okay.
us are highly offended by that statement. No, I think that brings up a good point. I'm in marketing. I do marketing for a living. I have done it for 20 years, and I am not the right person to ask how to market and sell your home. Right. So actually, Priscilla, Chris, agents, the real estate agents, real estate professionals are marketing experts in their specific niche. So to have this list and then to have your insight, I can't wait to see what the difference will be, Priscilla, for these folks with your insight. Because yeah, the way that other people look at a house when they walk into it is not the way you look at it. I guarantee you would say, remove all of your things. Not everyone is obsessed with vintage and antiques and 80s and 90s memorabilia as you are, so you need to take that all away. Yeah, but I just think it's really, really valuable for sellers and buyers and those of us who are not experts to remember that you got to where you are, Priscilla, by doing this for a living. And you are a marketing expert when it comes to selling homes and knowing what your target audience, which is home buyers, wants when they walk in the door. And little things like cleaning a ceiling fan, which thanks, I'll add that to my to-do list for today. For my house make a big, big difference. I love the notes that we have that say paint in the can is worth $20, but it's worth $1,000 on the wall. I think that's just the way to sum it all up. Like it may seem like a little thing to buy a can of paint and freshen up a wall or two, but it really can translate to more money and more interested buyers and an easier home selling process along the way.
And one tip that I give people that isn't on our home enhancement checklist, which we probably need to go ahead and add it, is my rule of thumb. What I tell people and what I've always told them through all of the years is when I walk through homes and they have like knickknacks and things out, is if it can fit in a shoebox, it needs to go. So if it can fit in a shoebox, it needs to go. Put it away. And
I'm never selling my house, is what you just told me.
And I know that sucks. Like, and I always tell them, I know it sucks, but this is temporary. Like, this is just temporary. And I show a lot of empathy because I know selling your house. And I also tell them that when you sell your house and we walk through houses, people do not live like this, okay? This is not how most people live. Now, Chris does. He's a minimalist. Chris is not a normal person. He does live like that. He is a minimalist.
That's a whole other podcast too. The Chris is not a normal person podcast is the one I'm waiting on.
Oh my gosh. I need to become more like Chris. I am not a minimalist.
I don't think that's a good plan for life, but
yeah, I need to get control over that. But seriously though, if it can fit in a shoebox, it needs to go. So
I like it.
But I do show a lot. I'm very empathetic to them, and I don't want them to think that I'm judging them by any means because it is their home. But it just needs to go because you want people to be able to focus on the size of the home.
Yeah. And that's a good transition to the whole marketing plan for your home. You know, we actually, in our brochure, number one is price your home competitively. And we're going to talk about that in more detail once we get to the comparative market analysis and pinpoint price analysis. But if pricing your home is the number one on the marketing plan in terms of importance, making your home look as best it can be is number two. So it's hard to, we can't really stress enough how critical it is that as a seller, you set your home up, you put yourself in the shoes of a potential buyer. The other thing to keep in mind in the marketing plan is, and we as realtors sometimes take this for granted, but the reason we are realtors, the prime reason we are realtors is because it gives us access to the local multiple listing service. And the multiple listing service is the online marketplace for every single realtor in town to show your home off to every other licensee, of course, but it's the multiple listing service that drives data and information to Zillow and Realtor.com and 1,000 other places on the internet. So you want your agent to leverage the multiple listing service. So I know Priscilla, you know, she prepares, you know, the listing information, and she makes sure that it's submitted accurately to the multiple listing service. And in our area, you know, I know Priscilla, you make it a rule because of what our odd location is. You're not just listing that property in the Springfield area, Western Regional, or Clark County. You're also listing that property in the Columbus MLS and the Dayton MLS because we have so much overlap. So you want to get it in front of as many people as possible. And that MLS is the vital tool for getting your home in front of as many buyers and their agents as you possibly can. The second thing to keep in mind, and Priscilla, maybe you could talk about this, is this whole thing with having high quality photos. And you know, I guess there's times when, you know, iPhone photos are appropriate or, you know, okay, are not going to necessarily hurt the sale price, but there's other times where, you know, you want to get a professional. So how do you approach that, Priscilla?
About 10 years, well, probably about 8 years ago, I went to a camera shop down in Beaver Creek, and I bought a really nice wide angle lens and a really nice flash for my Nikon body. So I have a really, really nice camera set up myself. So that way, what I'll do is on any kind of houses that I'll photograph myself, people who, you know, anybody who really doesn't want to have a photographer come in. These are houses that are really cluttered. They can't get everything out. They're really probably not in the greatest of condition. You know what I mean? Those are the kind of houses that I will go ahead and just photograph myself. Other than that, I'll go ahead and call a photographer and have them come in and photograph the property.
And the reason is there's no good reason for you as the listing agent or the seller to go to the extra expense of having a professional photographer through the house, right? If the house isn't going to benefit from it.
Exactly. And plus, I think with them, they're also more comfortable with me and they really don't want that photographer in there. Plus, I'll tell you, I've got a property right now that when people are doing stuff, when a property is in that condition and we do put it on the market, a lot of times they'll make some changes very rapidly. So then I have to go back over and redo photos.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to have a photographer go over and take pictures when I'm going to be back over there here in just a few days, changing them out again.
The other consequence too, sometimes that I think a lot of agents kind of take this path. If the house doesn't show well, they don't take any pictures, or they take very, very few pictures. And, typically, I think there for a while, most of the MLSs would only take up to 25 pictures, which a few years ago was a lot. Now I don't think there's any sort of limit on how many pictures you can upload. But, the more pictures that you can take, whether a house shows like a model home or not, the better off you're going to be from a marketing perspective. So to have an agent like yourself, that even if a house doesn't show as well as maybe we'd like, that still doesn't mean that we don't have an obligation to tell the story of the house in as attractive as a way as we possibly can, and to have the equipment and the skill to do that and again, that's what sets great listing agents apart from the part-timers.
But it's so important to me, and I know that I drive my assistant extremely bonkers, but I do not care. I'm serious. It's critical to me that with my photos, and I tell her this, that I want it to go from the exterior front to the front door to the living room. I want people to be able to view the photos as if they're walking through the house. And then you go upstairs, and then there's the bed. I don't want it to be like, here's the kitchen, here's a bedroom, here's a bathroom, here's a living room, here's a basement. It drives me insane when realtors will cluster photos of a house. You can make no rhyme or reason of what the property is.
Yeah.
The pictures are completely, they just mixed them all up and they just uploaded them.
Yeah.
And it's like, figure it out for yourself.
How often do you do a 3D tour?
I have not been doing the 3D tours at all. I'm just not really a big fan of them because the color of them are they've been so like whited out, kind of, if that makes sense.
I blame millennials for that. Not me, obviously, but
Yeah.
like if a home is all white and gray,
Yeah.
then it might not show as well in 3D. Everything is flat, right?
Yes, you're exactly right.
What are your thoughts on videos?
I love the videos, and Wow Photography, for example, their videos, they keep them very short, which I love because I'm ADHD, so I don't like to watch a long video, and they make them very quick. So it's really nice.
So you're okay with those pictures?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too. So I think I misspoke. I think when I think of the 3D tours, and I guess it's not really 3D, is it? But it's 360 degrees. It's the beauty of those. I love the WOW tours. It's not appropriate for every home, but two reasons I like it. One, if you like to watch videos, you can watch a video and you can set that video up so it takes a tour of the house, not into random rooms. I also love them because if you're like me, you can actually look at the floor plan that it creates, click on a room, and then see that entire room, ceiling, floor, all the way around the whole thing. And I think that adds a tremendous amount of value. Personally, I don't have the patience to sit through videos because I want to jump to the room I care about.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's why I love those WOW 3D videos. If you're a video person, watch it. But if you want to jump from room to room, you can do that too. So I think that's a huge value add. And it's also important for sellers to know that is not cheap. I mean, I know in some markets that's $300, $400, $500, $700, $800, depending on the size of the house. And I do think it's an appropriate marketing package. For some people, it's not appropriate for everybody. But again, the key is get as many pictures of the houses as you can on the internet and on the MLS and tell your story.
Well, I've been one of the only agents doing floor plans on all of my listings recently, but now I know like RIST has been offering, you can do the floor plan now on the MLS. So
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't know how that technology
yeah,
works,
I
but
haven't done it
that's
on
helpful.
wrist. I haven't done it on wrist yet, but I've been already paying to have Wow do it for me on all my listings. And I just know that the consumers absolutely love it. They always tell me they wish all the real estate agents would do it. Because so many people out of state, when they look at listings, they can see exactly how a house is laid out just by looking at the blueprint.
Yeah, I think that's critical. And the other cool thing is, and we don't have this as much now as we did, but during COVID, a house that had a 3D wow package, a virtual tour package, we had people buying homes from all over the world during COVID, and they could literally see, everything that was going on in that room. Now, if the room was cluttered or whatever, maybe you can't see everything, but you could definitely get a better view of the house. The other thing that's a pet peeve for me, and I think a pet peeve for a lot of sellers is buyers that want to take, multiple tours through the house at all hours, and to have really good pictures online or a virtual tour, if those are well done, it eliminates a lot of that need or that desire on the part of the buyers to keep coming back for more. So definitely something from a marketing perspective to think about. And again, you want your listing company to create maximum exposure for your property. You want to list it. You want to make sure that it's in the MLS, every MLS nearby. If you're in Dayton and you have a relative who happens to be an agent in Columbus and they want to list your house in Dayton, great. But you need to make sure that they join the Dayton MLS, right? You need to get maximum exposure, and you need to tell all the agents, and you need to be on, Zillow, Truly, a realtor, all of them. But having said that, we don't just rely on the internet. So I know we're a little bit old-fashioned in regard, but what are some of the things that you do, Priscilla, that are kind of analog or kind of old school?
So I make sure that I print out I do all the color brochures, two-sided brochures, and I print those for a brochure box for the signs. And I also print them for inside the house. And then I make sure that I print off all of the disclosure forms. So those are also at the property for agents when they do go and show the property. I also print the layout of the lot. So that's there at the house as well. And then any additional information that's pertinent to the property. That way, anytime anybody goes to the house, everything is there. They don't have to worry about, hey, will you get this for me? And then I'll decide if I want to make an offer. They pretty much can decide on the spot if they want to make an offer. They've got everything right there at their fingertips.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's cool too, because Kylie sets up these instant open houses for us, which is great, and you can download all that information. But if you're in the moment in a house and somebody gets excited, to be able to just pick up those papers, just like we
yes.
did, 10 years ago, there's huge value to that from the owner's perspective.
And then we send out just listed cards
Yeah,
through.
old school.
Yep. So we do the just listed cards. And then I've also been doing the price reduced cards. So I make sure I do that. And then I've also done the open house invites on the cards as well. When I do my open houses, I try to schedule those a couple weeks in advance so I can do those as well. So postage, it's funny because a lot of people, they don't get they get junk mail, but they don't really get mail from people anymore. So they really do enjoy getting, I get feedback on mail that I send out, believe it or not.
Yeah. It's funny. I remember you and I talking about, gosh, I guess it's been a few years now, that your superpower is open houses. Nobody does the planning and the detail to pull off a successful open house like you do. So if you want to list your house, Priscilla's your person. She's going to get it done. All right. Clear and open communication. So this section of the brochure, yes, clear and open communication with your agent is critical. But the other thing that usually comes up is, or it used to, maybe it's not as much anymore, but you probably still get requests from sellers for agent feedback. How often do agents actually provide feedback to you about what their buyers thought of the house? And oh, by the way, I absolutely subscribe to the fact that the best feedback you can get is that you didn't get an offer. But what's the state of play out there in the world right now about getting feedback from
It's
buyers?
probably about 30% of the time. I have to track them down to get feedback.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, when we wrote this a few years ago, it was 35% of the time. So I
Yeah,
bet you it has dropped a little bit.
yeah.
And
It's sad. The professionalism in this industry is definitely declined. We had so many, I think it's just because we had such an influx of agents get into the business during COVID. And we also have such an overflow of agents that come in from larger markets where they're not selling properties. And they don't, like when you have people come in from Cincinnati that know nothing about Springfield, for example, they're so reliant on us for all of the information. So it's
yeah.
just crazy.
And it's sad because there are times when, the buyer maybe has something that's constructive that, might in some way help a seller. But the reason I add this in here and why we have it in the brochure is I want to set expectations up front with our sellers that, we can spend days and days, hours and hours, whatever it is, trying to get feedback. But the reality of it is, we're just not. Now, of course, if we show the house, right, if we were going to bring the buyer for your house, we're going to give you all the feedback that we can possibly give you. But I don't want listing clients necessarily to expect that we're going to get the kind of detailed responses when other agents show the home as they'll get from the listing agent. I wanted to touch a little bit too on the next section, which is negotiating and structuring the sale. I think this is critical, and we lost sight of this during COVID, when it was just a frenzy. But, you want your agent to not just present and not just to send you offers, to sign it via dot loop or DocuSign. You want your agent to take the time to review line by line if necessary, at least section by section, and present all offers to you. And I say all offers because I think for the most part, we're still, maybe not the most part, but we still have multiple offer situations these days. But you want that agent to review and present all offers to you as they are received and provide whatever level of education you feel you need. It's not enough, and it never was enough to just send something over in dot loop and leave the client to their own devices. Quite frankly, I think that's how we got in trouble with Sitzer Burnett in the first place. We just got lazy and sloppy. But you can expect Priscilla and any other Roost agent that they're going to sit down with you or Zoom with you, whatever it takes to review and present every offer to you as they are received. And of course, you only want to be working with buyers that are at a minimum pre-qualified for a mortgage or can provide proof of funds for a cash sale. And your agent needs to sort through that stuff. It doesn't mean that they're not obligated to present an offer, but they're going to make it very, very clear to any buyers they're working with or to any other agent that you need to understand my seller is not going to take your offer seriously if you can't show that they have an ability to get a loan. They're not going to waste their time. And the other piece is, from negotiating structures, the sale, it's the price, of course, is critical, but it's the terms, right? So you need a professional who's able to explain to you, how those terms, whether it's closing costs, whether it's buyer agency fees, whether it's closing and occupancy dates, right? The terms themselves, maybe they're going to give you time to stay in the house until your new house is ready. That all factors into what's a good deal for all parties concerned. So all those things a good agent is going to discuss with you, bring to light, but their goal isn't just to get your property under contract. Their goal should be to get your property under contract and get you to the closing table on time with as few surprises as possible. So I guess that sounds like a rant there, but Priscilla, any thoughts on that?
No, I agree because it is so hard. I mean, the past 6 months have been so hard to get to the closing table. I mean, I've got a few clients right now that we are like becoming family because it's been rough. I mean, it's been a rough few months. But they're sticking out. They're sticking it out with me. I mean, they're sticking it out. It's not, it's nobody's fault. It's just we have that domino effect where this house has to sell, that how we've got four houses that are all connected.
Yeah,
And
at least where we're doing business, the market is a little soft right now as we go into
yeah,
spring. And, it's always soft during an election year and probably 2024 more so. Today is what, March 4th. And it still feels like we're in the middle of an election year because there's just so much going on in the country and so forth. So it's a different sort of time right now, and all the more reason that we're working with people who are acting in good faith and have the ability to actually buy and close on a house. So something to be aware of.
And I do think that's why it is so important to work with people who definitely trust you and that you trust them and you have a good relationship. And not everybody's going to want to work with me, and I'm not going to want to work with
Because you're going to spend a lot of time together.
Yeah, I mean, we are going to spend a lot of time together.
The other thing I think it's important to touch on, and sometimes people sell homes because they get transferred, they're moving out of state, or maybe it's an estate situation or whatever. But a great agent is also going to help you manage the transition from your current home to your next home. I think there's a lot of people who are ready to move, but the whole idea of having to sell their home, pay off that mortgage, make sure they get enough money to be able to put money down and qualify for the next mortgage, that's a daunting thing that I think causes people to stay maybe a little bit longer in their house than they maybe would have. But a great agent like Priscilla is going to be able to help her clients who are moving from one house to the next do that successfully. And you know what, before I forget, can you touch on, I know you're great at this, but how you handle your seller net sheet, the seller proceeds, because especially when we're talking about, helping somebody get from one house to the next, knowing exactly what they're going to walk away with at closing and be able to put down on the next house is critical. Do you have some words of wisdom on that?
I'm a little bit of a weirdo on that. I still do it by hand. I don't do it electronically or depend on the system to do it for me. I always do it myself, the way I was taught back in 1993, because I want my seller to always know where they're at. And I'm usually within a couple $100 usually. It's just so critical that they are always aware of their numbers. And I just use a basic net sheet showing them what their expenses are and break it all down for them. And I can do it as simple, just write it down and take a picture of it if I have to. But at least they know where they're at all times while we're going back and forth negotiating.
That's a critical part of the listing presentation too, that first meeting, because most people aren't aware that there's conveyance fees, that how tax prorations work and crediting the incoming buyer because of the way that the calendar is in your particular jurisdiction. There's just a million different things that it feels like that could come up that most people just aren't aware of because they don't live with it every day. And to be able to have a detailed net sheet that shows every one of those, hidden costs, that's critical, because I think some people think, oh, I just got to pay my agent, but it's always a bit more than that, isn't it?
Well, like right now is the perfect time to do this podcast, because I just had this happen. Somebody said to me, I just paid my taxes. And I said, you just paid the first half of last year. We still owe for the last half of last year, and you owe for what we are going to use into 2025. So, and the taxes are pretty significant on this property. So, that's a big hit. And like I said, if somebody didn't do this net sheet for them, they would have been really surprised.
Yeah. Then you end up at, 3 days before closing with, holy crap, I thought I was getting X and now it's X minus Y. And that's not a great situation to be in. The only other thing I want to touch on with helping people buy, we're going to put in the show notes the Buy with Roost brochure, and you can always visit our website at buywithroost.com. And the other thing, and we haven't talked, actually, I think Laci and Kylie had a post about this, but I think you call it a consequence, call it a benefit. But as a company, we want to work with as many people who are moving from one house and into another that we can, and to the point where we want to add the most value we possibly can, hopefully the best value in the market. We want to be able to get everybody a Priscilla to work with, but we want to reduce that total fee burden on sellers who are also going to be buyers with us. And that's why I think you're going to be hearing more from us about bundled fees for getting from one house to the next house. So we'll probably do a whole podcast on that at some point in the future.
I like that idea.
So I want to touch now on managing the transaction. And I think at this point, we're about 45, 50 minutes in. I hopefully it's clear to everybody listening that putting the sign in the yard and getting a contract written and even accepted is about 5% of what a great listing agent does. So, there's just so many other things involved, and what you're paying for in that fee goes far beyond, just attracting a bunch of buyers, or even the buyer or two or three or whatever it is that actually writes a contract, and that's where we get into managing the transaction. That time between negotiating the contract and getting to the closing table is the most stressful part for any home seller. It just seems like it's a roller coaster of, well, this is fine. Oh, no, this happened, or the buyer did this, or their loan didn't do that. It's always something. And that's where, again, it goes back to clear and open communication and having an agent that understands the process and has great relationships with the lenders and the title people, so that they can say to you, this is an issue that we need to work through. This is, but it's not, or this is an issue that is very, very common. This is how we've already dealt with it. This is how we're going to deal with it. No need to worry. I'll tell you when there's a reason to worry. This isn't one of them. This is what I do for a living, right? Whereas some agents don't have enough experience under their belt, with any transaction, much less working with a seller, and they are not going to know what to expect any more than you are. So experience matters. And you definitely want to, if you're interviewing Priscilla, you don't need to interview anybody else. But if you're not interviewing Priscilla, you need to interview 2 or 3 different people. So some of the milestones that, that come up during closing, there's the appraisal that can come in low, right? That causes problems for the seller because the contract is contingent on the property appraising. Inspections, the contract is generally contingent on inspections that the buyer finds acceptable. Maybe there's repairs that have to be done. Maybe there's issues with the financing commitment. Maybe with the buyer's pay stubs. Maybe it's down payment. Maybe it's a grant for a first-time buyer. Sometimes weird things come up in the title work, like sometimes on deeds, every X number of sales, they have to do a new survey or something. Maybe there's a homeowner association that suddenly pops up that something nobody knew about, that has an issue with a fence that went up 20 years ago. It goes on and on. The final walkthrough, you could go 30, 45 days, think you're in great shape, and then suddenly, something happens at the final walkthrough, and then that has to be dealt with. And then, of course, the whole thing about coordinating the move, and making sure that everybody knows for sure when they have access to the property as far as the buyer goes. If it's at closing, it's great. If the seller has rights to the home for a few days after closing, all of those things is what you're really paying a realtor for.
I think you just nailed it for me, because I do want to get the best deal, right? Like, I want to get as much for my money as possible. And if I'm going to sell, I want to make sure I get, what my house is worth. But really and truly, as a very anxious person who does not have a lot of experience buying and selling homes, this is what I am paying for. And I would pay a premium, right? Because you said, I've done this this has been my entire career. If there's something to worry about, I'll let you know. There's nothing to worry about right now. And my lender, actually, when I bought my home, said those exact words to me. And that is the moment that I could relax. Because I thought, I picked a good one, I trusted him. And this whole process of choosing someone to help you through this, one of the most stressful milestones in your entire life, even if you do it 7 times, over the course of your life, is really about finding someone who is a professional, who you can trust to walk you through this, so that you don't have to bear this unnecessary burden of trying to figure out what you don't know, right? Because there's just no way. In all of my, I could take months and years, and unless I, go get my real estate license and then proceed to help others buy and sell 100 houses or 500 like Priscilla has, I'm never going to be as good at this as the person that I hire. And I think that for a lot of folks, just the thought of going through these processes and having someone by their side who they really can trust is is going to be the biggest part of it. Like, I think that I could probably go to just about anybody, and the difference in how much money I'm going to make or how much money I'm going to pay is going to be minimal. But the difference in how those months of my life are going, I'm going to look back on those and say, oh, I was able to be present with my children and not have a panic attack every day over, buying or selling my house. That's huge. I'll pay an extra $1,000 or 10,000 or whatever it takes to be able to not lose those months of my life to stress and anxiety. So I think that's something when people think about who they're going to hire to help them buy or sell a home, that's a big part of it that doesn't always get talked about.
I think you can go so far as to say that you kind of want your listing agent to be reassuringly expensive. Right?
Absolutely. That's exactly it. Like, I will pay a premium for that because it's
If
peace
you're
of
going to pay a
mind.
discount, you're going to get discounted service, and you can expect a lot more anxiety along the way.
And I think it's so important. This is something that it's so important to remember that this is something that a lot of people only do once or twice in their life. I mean, they don't do this a lot. I
I'm over
mean,
here thinking to myself, like, I've always said since I went through this home buying process that I'm never moving again because I don't want to go through the home buying process again. Literally did not occur to me until this day that if I chose to buy another home, I would also probably have to sell this one, which would double the stress and
yeah,
anxiety
it is
in the
so
whole
stressful.
process.
And I tell people, this is not a fun process. Like, this is going to be stressful, but we are going to try to make it as least stressful as possible. I mean, because it is so, I mean, it is, it's just so much stress on people because they've got so much going on in their life. Like, life is so busy now. Life is so busy. And so I try to take so much of that off of them because, like I said, it's a big life event. It really, really
Yeah,
is.
it's a big
And
deal.
I really try to show, I try to show them that I appreciate that. And I want them to know that I do know that it's a big event in their life.
As we get towards the end here, I want to talk a little bit about the pinpoint price analysis. In the marketing plan, we said that the number one step is to price your home appropriately, right? You want to get top dollar for your home based on the condition it's in, but you also want to price it in such a way that you're going to attract the largest number of buyers possible. And you want your agent to be able to provide you with a thorough and thoughtful assessment of your property. And it's got to be based on its location, its style, and its condition. Now, a good agent is probably going to walk into a listing appointment with some comparable sales, but they're not going to be able to give you a true pinpoint price analysis until they actually see the home, the condition of the home, how the home is laid out, so on and so forth. So I don't want anybody listening to expect a pat ironclad number when their agent walks in, because if that's the case, they're not taking into account, honestly, reality. And the other thing I think it's critical, and Priscilla, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but pricing your home in today's market, any market, it's a process. I don't want anybody listening to think of the market analysis, pinpoint price analysis, pricing your home. It's not a one-time event. You've got to develop literally a strategy. And I know Priscilla does this, in great detail, Priscilla, with your sellers, but you've got to have a strategy that's going to be attractive to the greatest number of qualified buyers. And the key there is qualified buyers that is also going to allow you to realize your financial goals for the sale. And that's not something that, Zillow is going to be able to do for you. That top line number is absolutely critical. Priscilla, I'm sure you do this, and I'm babbling, but if a house is going to be attractive, for instance, to a first-time buyer, we may counsel that you want to price that house at a price that, of course, will appraise, but will allow you to help a first-time buyer with their lender's closing costs and so forth, right? You want to structure a strategy or a price for your home that allows you to take care of terms and seller concessions that a first-time buyer, or honestly any buyer, might need. So there's a lot that goes into that. And you really want somebody by your side that knows the market, knows who the most likely buyer is for your home. And again, probably has somebody in their pipeline who, and they know exactly, what that buyer needs. And then that goes back to the critical importance of that seller net sheet,
That's
getting
exactly
that.
what I was getting ready to say. That net sheet is so important. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I cut you off, but that net sheet's going to show where you're going to anticipate different scenarios, right? So I think yours was like the one I would use too. Sometimes I would use like 3 different scenarios. And somebody's going to pay X, somebody's going to pay what you asked, somebody's going to pay X, but they're also going to want this, this, and this, right? So all that comes out of the proceeds, and what matters is the bottom line. So you're going to get that from a great agent, what you can expect to put in your pocket based on, again, the mortgage payoff, the tax proration, the realtor commission, seller concessions, homeowner association fees. I mean, there's just if you're out in the county, in Clark County, right? I think the seller still has to pay for a septic inspection, right? There's just so many things that go into that seller net sheet that at the end of the day affect what you're actually going to put in your pocket. So I'm soapboxing, forgive me. The congregation may be seated.
Nope, you're right.
The price is critical to marketing the home, but in the scheme of things, it's just another step in a multi-step process of actually getting you to the closing table.
And at the end of the day, the market is going to respond to the price. So if you get no showings, the price is too high. You need to drop the price. And if you are getting a lot of showings and you're getting no offers, the price is too high. So
yeah, the market tells us very, very clearly, and usually rather quickly, how we did on the price.
The buyers speak.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your client appreciation program, how you stay in touch and actually add value to your seller clients after the sale?
So all throughout the year, we all do this at Roost, giving back through different things. Probably our favorite program is the pie party in November. So the week of Thanksgiving, I do a big pie party. I give away about 100. Well, last year I gave away 160 pies from Mehefe's Pies in Dayton. That was fun. And then the year before I didn't do this last December, but I did 100 poinsettias in December. And then we did as a company, we do the pumpkin giveaway in October. We did coffee in March for St. Patrick's Day. So we've done all
There's
kinds of
always a
good
client
things.
appreciation event going on, just something
Yes.
fun to stay in touch. Yeah.
Yes. So all kinds of good stuff, giving back to our clients, showing appreciation for them, let them know that we care about them. Always giving away goofy little gifts throughout the year, things just
When
popping
you're
by to
always
see
there
them.
when they need something, right? So like
Yes.
that's the thing about being relationship based, which is honestly it's a lot of the reason I love working with Roost, and that I'm so emphatic about it, is that you guys build these relationships, and if you've got a seller or a buyer that you've worked with in the past and they need a recommendation for some sort of labor, or they need something fixed, or if they have a question, they don't have to be actively buying or selling a home to reach out to you, I think. And you guys always can have a recommendation for them, or you're there. And I think that relationship is huge, because buying and selling a home is a process that has a start and an end. But that's not where my questions end.
Home ownership never ends.
Yeah, home ownership is a constant struggle for some of us. No, but it's really nice to have, I think, somebody that you can trust. Again, you've already established that you can trust you guys, that if you're the one leading the way, then they can trust you, and you're so professional and you have so much experience in the local area. You know everybody. So just having you as a resource, I think, is a real benefit to being a client. I mean, never mind the pies and the poinsettias and the pumpkins,
I
which
do
is
like
great
pie.
alliteration, by the way, for a marketing person, but I don't need to use that. But you have a resource in Roost and in you individually that I think not a lot of other folks have with their real estate professionals.
All right. Well, for Priscilla, before I close this out, anything else you want to add? Any words of wisdom?
No, I think we
All
covered
of your
it.
contact information in the show notes. People are going to be able to find you. They can also go to Roost Real Estate and find you, and they can go to www.callpriscillaandstartpacking.com too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, just to close this out, at Roost Real Estate Company, we believe that selling your home should be exciting, it should be empowering, rewarding, and we hope, we can't guarantee it's going to be stress-free, but it should be an enjoyable experience. So from the first meeting, with your listing agent through the closing day, everybody at Roost is committed to giving you expert guidance, transparent communication, proactive marketing strategies, and making this a successful experience. Because after all, if we don't give you the best experience we possibly can, we're not going to earn your referrals in the future to family, friends, and coworkers. And like Priscilla, like everybody at Roost, 90% of, maybe even more of Priscilla's business is from repeat clients and from referrals from repeat clients. So you can get all this detail in our Sell with Roost brochure. It outlines our approach. If you're thinking about selling your home, we're thrilled to start the conversation. You can visit www.listwithroost.com and download our Sell with Roost brochure, or reach out for a personalized consultation. And again, you can reach out directly to Priscilla either through the Roost website or through her website at callpriscillaandstartpacking.com. And if you found today's episode valuable, be sure to subscribe to the All Things Real Estate podcast and share it with someone who might benefit. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
See you next time.
See you next time. All right.
Bye-bye.